Hello friends, welcome to the Night Watchman channel. Today I'm going to tell you a terrifying and thrilling creepy horror story that will make you feel the chill of fear. If you enjoy my story, don't forget to like and subscribe so I can feel your love and support through your likes and subscriptions. I never thought a part-time job could break me like that. Not physically, though the long nights definitely wrecked my back, but mentally. Even now, years later, I still avoid malls. I can't stand the smell of polished tile, the faint perfume of department stores, or the hollow echo of an empty corridor after closing. My name is Rachel Monroe, and in the fall of 2018, I was 26 years old, halfway through a master's degree in sociology at Grand Haven University. Tuition had eaten every cent of my savings, and my stipend barely covered textbooks. I was behind on rent, my car was a decade past due for maintenance, and my student loan company had started sending those politely threatening emails again. That's why I took the job at Macy's inside Grand Haven Mall. The overnight restock shifts, Friday through Sunday, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. The pay wasn't great, but it was quiet work, and I could sneak in study breaks when things got slow. Most nights we had 2 or 3 people until around 2 a.m., and then the others clocked out, leaving one person, usually me, to finish the shift. People always ask, weren't you scared being alone that late? Honestly, not at first. The store was massive, sure, but I found the quiet comforting. No customers, no managers hovering, no blaring music. Just the soft hum of the HVAC system and the gentle buzz of fluorescent lights. I used to tell myself that the world outside might be chaos, but inside those locked glass doors I was in control. Safe, predictable. That illusion broke on October 19th, 2018. That night started like any other. The air outside had that sharp Midwestern bite, cold enough to see your breath but not quite winter. I just finished a brutal midterm exam that drained every ounce of energy I had left. When I got to the employee entrance, Ben, the security guard, was there smoking his usual menthol. "Long night ahead, Monroe," he asked, flicking ash onto the pavement. "Always," I said with a tired smile. "You gonna do your rounds tonight or just chain smoke till sunrise?" He chuckled, a deep smoker's laugh. "Hey, if the cameras are rolling, I'm working." Inside, I clocked in and joined the rest of the skeleton crew. Lena, a college freshman who never stopped talking, and Eddie, a quiet, middle-aged stock guy who always had one earbud in listening to 80s rock. We unloaded boxes, sorted sweaters, folded jeans. The rhythm of routine made the hours blur. Around 1:45 a.m., Lena stretched, yawned, and said, "All right, I'm out." Got class at 9, Eddie followed a few minutes later with a lazy wave. "See you Monday, Rach." I watched them disappear through the employee exit, then exhaled the kind of sigh that only comes when you realize you have the entire building to yourself. I liked it that way. I always did. I went through the usual motions, checked the doors, dimmed the lights, turned the store playlist down low. The soft echo of Billie Holiday drifted through the aisles. Then I grabbed a Diet Coke from the vending machine, rolled up my sleeves, and started folding through the women's clearance section. That's when it happened. The door chime, a high metallic ding that sliced through the silence. I froze. That sound was only supposed to play when someone entered through the front doors, the mall entrance. But those doors were locked, always locked after midnight. I set the pile of shirts down and listened. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the air vents. "Probably a glitch," I muttered. "Old sensor." But before I could convince myself, the chime rang again. This time I saw it, a faint shadow moving across the glass doors at the front of the store. I stepped closer, careful, slow. My sneakers squeaked against the floor. The glass gleamed under the dim mall lights. Locked. Secure. No one outside. Then I noticed it. A car. Parked half on the curb, half in the fire lane, just beyond the sliding doors. The headlights were off, but I could see the silhouette of someone inside, head tilted slightly toward me. A jolt of unease crawled through my chest. I pulled out my phone and snapped a quick picture. The image blurred, but when I zoomed in, I could make out a man's face. He looked directly at me. I stepped back fast, my heart hammering. Maybe it was mall security. Maybe a random driver waiting for someone. But then the intercom crackled. Not my phone, not the radio, the store PA system, which was only accessible from the customer service desk. "Rachel," a voice said. Male, deep, calm. I froze. My name wasn't on my badge. Only employees knew it. "Who is this?" I said, my voice trembling. Static. Then a faint sound. Laughter. Slow. Uneven. I grabbed my phone and called Ben, the security guard. It rang twice before he picked up. "Macy's security." "Ben, it's Rachel. Someone just came on the PA system. You didn't buzz in, did you?" "I'm outside the food court right now," he said. "No one's supposed to be in there but you." "You sure it wasn't a glitch?" "Glitch doesn't know my name, Ben." Silence. "Then I'm coming down." I stayed on the line, crouched behind the counter, staring toward the women's shoes section. The store was too still, too quiet. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the lights, the creak of the vents, my heartbeat thudding in my ears. Then, movement. Near the handbags, a tall figure, lean, hooded, moving slow, like he belonged there. He turned slightly and I saw his face. Pale skin, deep-set eyes, an expression so flat it made my stomach twist. We locked eyes for half a second before he darted sideways, disappearing behind a display of coats. "Ben!" I screamed into the phone. "He's inside! He's inside the store!" "Stay where you are," Ben ordered. "Police are on their way." I crouched low, phone clutched to my chest. My breathing came in short bursts. Then I heard it again. Ding! The door chime, followed by footsteps. Not his. Softer. Slower. I peeked over the counter. An elderly woman stood by the perfume display. White cardigan. Floral scarf. Her name was Mrs. Lang, a retired nurse with dementia who wandered the mall from the assisted living center a few blocks away. I'd seen her before, usually escorted back by mall staff. "Mrs. Lang," I whispered, "what are you doing here?" She looked at me with glassy blue eyes and said softly, "You shouldn't talk to him." "Who?" "The man who rings." Before I could respond, another voice echoed from the men's section, a low hum like someone talking to themselves. I turned. A second figure, thin, gray-haired, in paint-splattered clothes. Mr. Daly, another dementia patient from the same facility. He looked up at me, eyes wide. "He said he's here for the girl with the folded shirts." That was me. I stumbled back, pressing my hands over my mouth. "Ben, where are you?" I whispered. "Almost there," he said. "Stay hidden." But before he could finish, the intercom came alive again. Static. Then that same calm voice. "Rachel," it said. "Don't call for help this time." When the red and blue lights finally flashed across the glass, I thought I was hallucinating. 2 officers stormed in through the side door, guns drawn, followed by Ben. They swept every aisle, every fitting room, every corner. The man was gone. They reviewed the security footage, but half the cameras near the women's section had static interference. The few that worked caught only flickers of movement, a hooded figure slipping through the emergency exit minutes before the police arrived. They said I was lucky, that I'd probably scared him off when I called 911. But when the officers asked about the 2 elderly wanderers, Mrs. Lang and Mr. Daly, the security team swore no one else entered or exited the building after 1:30 a.m. Their faces never appeared on camera. Not once. I quit the following week. The manager offered me extra pay to stay through the holidays, but I couldn't do it. I'd lie awake at night, replaying that voice in my head. Sometimes I'd wake up to the faint sound of that same ding, only to realize it was coming from my dreams. I still have the blurry photo of that car on my phone, the one from the parking lot. When I looked at it again months later, I noticed something I hadn't before. Through the windshield in the passenger seat was a reflection, like a person sitting beside him, a woman, older, wearing a floral scarf. Now, whenever I drive past Grand Haven Mall, the parking lot is mostly empty. The Macy's sign is dark, the doors chained shut, but every so often, I swear I see that same old car parked crooked in the fire lane, headlights off, waiting. And I can almost hear the faint chime of the door again, somewhere deep inside, waiting for me to answer. Story 2. I never planned on working in retail again. After I left my job at a hardware store in Kansas City, I told myself I was done with folding shirts and fake smiles. But rent has a way of humbling you, and when the bills started stacking up, I took what I could get. That's how I ended up at Belmont Department Store, in a half-dead shopping center on the edge of Wichita, Kansas. It wasn't glamorous, concrete floors that echoed with every step, lights that flickered like old fluorescent ghosts, but it paid better than most late shifts, and it was quiet. I liked quiet. My name's Ryan Hale, 28, one failed engagement behind me, and a college dropout. I'd studied journalism for 2 years before my dad got sick and things went sideways. After he passed, I never went back. I bounced between jobs, the kind that never ask about degrees or long-term plans. I told myself I liked the freedom, but most nights I just felt stuck. So when my friend Derek, a shift manager at Belmont, offered me a night stock position, I said yes. Midnight to 8 a.m., 5 nights a week. No customers, no pressure, just stocking, cleaning, and resetting displays. For the first few months, it was almost peaceful, until that night in October. It started ordinary enough. I pulled into the mall's empty parking lot a few minutes before midnight. The only other car was Derek's beat-up Honda Civic parked by the loading bay. I stepped out, hoodie zipped up against the chill, coffee in hand, and made my way to the back door. Inside, the store looked like a different world compared to the daytime chaos. Aisles perfectly lined, mannequins frozen mid-pose, soft music playing from the overhead speakers, even though no customers would hear it. Derek was leaning against the counter, scrolling his phone. "You're early," he said. "Couldn't sleep," I replied. "Figured I'd earn the extra 15 minutes. He smirked. "Don't say that too loud. They'll make you permanent." The rest of the crew filtered in. Marissa, a nursing student who worked nights to pay for textbooks, and Jaden, a 19-year-old kid who never stopped talking about cars. We were supposed to have 5 people that night, but Angela, our supervisor, had texted earlier. Food poisoning, out sick. "Just us 4 then," Derek said, scanning the clipboard. "Ryan, you take home goods tonight. Marissa, men's apparel. Jaden, you're with me unloading the truck." I nodded, grabbed a box cutter, and wheeled my cart toward the escalator. The second floor was almost silent except for the hum of the air vents. I liked it that way. Just me, the sound of cardboard tearing, and the steady rhythm of folding comforters. By 1 in the morning, I'd already stocked half the section. I stopped to take a sip of coffee that had long gone cold. That's when I heard it, so faint at first I thought I'd imagined it. A whisper. I froze, listening. "Ryan," my name, clear, soft, right behind me. I spun around. The aisle was empty, just rows of sheets and pillows, mannequins, and the endless fluorescent buzz. "Derek?" I called. Nothing. My pulse quickened. Maybe the vents carried a sound from downstairs. I shook, my head laughing nervously. "You're tired, man," I muttered to myself. "Need sleep." But something about it. It hadn't sounded like Derek. It was softer, almost hollow. I went back to work, trying to ignore the goosebumps crawling up my arms. At 1:18 a.m., the store's intercom crackled to life, static. Then, a voice, deep, rasping, distorted by the speaker. "Don't say anything. Just open the back door." I froze. The PA system only worked from the main office downstairs, and only managers had the key to that office. I stared at the ceiling speaker, heart thudding. "Derek?" I called down the escalator. "You messing with me?" No answer. Then the voice again, louder. "Open it!" Now I dropped the box cutter and bolted downstairs. Derek was standing by the loading bay, clipboard in hand. Jaden was still unloading boxes. "Did you guys just use the intercom?" I asked, breathless. Derek frowned. "No, why?" I told him exactly what I heard. The voice, the words. Jaden laughed. "Bro, you're hearing things. Sleep deprivation's a bitch." "Shut up," Derek said. "That system shouldn't even be on." He set down the clipboard and started toward the hallway that led to the office. Marissa appeared from the women's section. "What's going on?" Before anyone could answer, the intercom popped again, loud enough to make all of us flinch. "If you don't open it, I will." The line cut. A moment later, something slammed into the steel back door. Bang! The noise was so loud it echoed across the empty store. Jaden swore and stumbled back. What the hell was that? Bang! Another hit, harder this time. The hinges groaned. Derek moved fast. Everyone to the office, now! We sprinted down the hall, slamming the door shut behind us. Derek locked it and grabbed the landline. Dead. He tried again. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone. No signal. Same for Marissa's. What the fuck is happening? Jaden whispered. His voice cracked. Then hiss. Static from the intercom speaker above the desk. Heavy breathing, slow, wet. And then, I'm already inside. For a second, nobody moved. Then Derek whispered, stay quiet. We listened. Footsteps, slow, dragging, somewhere out on the sales floor, getting closer. I peered through the narrow office window. At first, nothing, just mannequins, racks of clothes, the faint reflection of my own pale face, then movement. A man stepped into view. He was barefoot, wearing what looked like torn prison clothes, one sleeve soaked dark with blood. His face was gaunt, eyes sunken, mouth twisted into something between a grin and a grimace. In his hand, something metallic, a gun. My stomach dropped. He moved with purpose, limping slightly, head turning like he knew exactly where we were. Shit, Derek whispered. He's got a weapon. Before he could say anything else, the man turned toward the office window. His eyes met mine. He smiled wider. Then he sprinted. The door shuddered under the first hit. Derek braced it with his shoulder. Help me, he shouted. Jaden grabbed the handle, pushing back. Marissa screamed, BAM. Another hit. The lock cracked. The third hit blew the door open. Derek fell backward, crashing into the desk. The man stepped inside, gun raised. Down, he barked. We dropped to the floor instantly. The smell hit next, metallic, sweat, rot. I don't want to hurt you, he said, voice calm, almost rehearsed. I just need your phones, keys, wallets. That's it. He aimed at Derek. You first. Derek slid his phone forward with a trembling hand. Then mine, then Marissa's, then Jaden's. He gathered them up, stuffing them into a torn jacket pocket. His eyes flicked to the desk, duct tape. He grabbed it. Hands behind your backs. Derek tried to reason with him. Listen, man, we'll help you, okay? You don't... Shut up, the man snapped. He taped us fast. Wrists, ankles. Too tight. My skin burned. When he got to Marissa, he hesitated. You work here? He asked softly. She nodded, crying. He stared at her for a long second, then looked away. I'm not gonna kill you, he muttered. Not tonight. He backed out of the office, limping toward the dark aisles. We heard him moving, keys jingling, then the beep of a car unlock. A minute later, an engine roared to life outside. My heart sank. He'd taken Derek's SUV. We waited. 10 minutes, maybe 20. Finally, Derek managed to rip the tape from his wrist using the desk edge. We freed each other and ran straight for the front entrance. The glass doors were still locked. Outside, flashing red and blue lights were already pulling into the lot. A security guard had seen the SUV crash through the loading gate and called 911. The man, later identified as Caleb Rowe, 34, escaped convict from Sedgwick County Jail, was caught 3 towns over, bleeding out in a stolen car. He'd killed 2 correctional officers during his escape. When police reviewed the store footage, every camera had gone black at 1 or 16 a.m. The exact minute I first heard my name whispered over the intercom. The tech team later confirmed something impossible. The PA system hadn't been activated from the office. The control board was unplugged. The intercom shouldn't have been on at all. I quit 2 days later, didn't even pick up my last check. Sometimes when I drive past that mall, I still see the faint glow of the Belmont sign through the dark. They reopened the store months later with new staff, new locks, new everything. But every October around that same date, I dream I'm back there, standing in the home goods aisle, folding blankets under those humming lights. And every time just before I wake up, I hear it again, a whisper, soft close. Ryan. Sorry 3, I never planned on working nights, but life doesn't always care about your plans. It just keeps handing you bills until you run out of excuses. That's what I told myself the night I signed the papers for the overnight shift at Macy's in Crestwood, Indiana. Rent was overdue, my car's transmission was slipping, and my credit cards were crying louder than I was. I was 27, living alone in a one-bedroom apartment above a laundromat that smelled like detergent and burnt metal. The kind of place where the walls were so thin I could tell when my neighbor sneezed or cried. I told myself it was temporary, just a few months, just until I could breathe again. That was in February. By late October, I was still there, still walking through the employee entrance every night at 10:55, scanning my badge, forcing a half smile at people who looked just as tired as I felt. The night shift at Macy's was its own little world. No music blaring from speakers, no perfumed ladies spraying clouds of designer scent, no cash registers ringing. Just the faint buzz of old fluorescent lights, the echo of our footsteps, and the low hum of the HVAC that always seemed one filter away from dying. The mall, Crestwood Galleria, was practically dead. Once it had been the pride of the town. Now it was mostly shuttered storefronts and dust-covered for lease signs. Only Macy's, a Planet Fitness, and a discount shoe store kept the lights on. When the last customers left and the mall went quiet, the air changed. It wasn't just stillness. It was like the building was holding its breath. Our team that October 30th night was the same as always. Mark, our shift manager, ex-military, mid-40s, always looked like he hadn't slept in a week. Jess, a college sophomore who worked nights for extra cash, bright, funny, but always on her phone. Luis, mid-30s, quiet, eyes like he'd seen too much in life, married with 2 kids, barely spoke unless it mattered. And me, Ian Cole, the guy who kept telling himself this was temporary. "All right, team," Mark said as we clocked in. "Standard plan tonight. We finish the Halloween clearance, prep the floor for Black Friday setup, and try not to kill each other before sunrise." Jess laughed, sipping an energy drink. "If I fall asleep standing, just push me over." "I'm good for it," Lewis gave a small smirk. "I'll bring a pillow next time." I tried to laugh too, but I'd been dragging since morning. No amount of caffeine could shake off the weight I'd been carrying lately. Late bills, my dad's medical debt, the quiet fear that this might be all my life ever became. By midnight, the store was dead silent. Jess's music faintly leaked from her earbuds as she refolded sweaters and juniors. Luis was somewhere near Home Goods moving boxes of bedding. Mark was in the back office with inventory sheets. I was near menswear, adjusting racks and trying not to zone out. That's when I heard it. Clink, metal on metal. It came from the hallway near the loading dock, that narrow corridor where we stacked cardboard and returns. The sound echoed, sharp, distinct. "Probably the dock gate," I muttered. The metal grate always rattled when the wind caught it, but then it came again. Clink, scrape, clink. Longer this time, slower, like someone dragging something metallic. I set down my scanner. "Mark," I called out. No answer. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied. I told myself not to be an idiot. Just check. Be sure. When I got closer, the air got colder. That hallway always had a draft, but this felt different, like stepping into a walk-in freezer. The dock gate was halfway visible through the small glass window at the end. I peered out. Nothing. The parking lot lights outside flickered, making the shadows shift. Then the door handle moved. Just a small turn. Then another, like someone testing it. I froze, my breath catching. "Mark," I said again, louder this time. The handle jerked hard, rattling against the latch. That's when I ran. "Slow down," Mark said when I burst into the office, breathless. "Someone's at the dock," I gasped. "They were trying the handle." He frowned. "Security doors are locked after 10. No one can get in." "Then someone's out there," I insisted. "Check the cameras." Mark sighed, turning to the monitor. The grainy black and white feed flickered. There was me standing by the door, frozen in place. "Nothing," he said after a moment. No, rewind." Jess had come in behind me, her voice shaking slightly. "Right there." Mark paused the footage, zoomed in. For a moment, it was just static. Then, barely visible, a shape appeared by the dock door. Tall, too tall, no face, no outline that made sense. Just a stretched, human-like shadow standing a few feet behind me on the screen. And then the feed glitched to black. System's been doing that all week, Mark muttered. Bad cable. But no one moved. Luis walked in, silent as always, eyes scanning our faces. What happened? When Mark told him, he just stared at the frozen screen. His lips tightened. It's not the first time, he said quietly. What do you mean? I asked. He hesitated. Sometimes I hear tapping at the dock, like someone knocking. Only it's always after 2. After that, no one wanted to be alone. Jess refused to go back to juniors by herself. Luis stuck near home goods. I stayed closer to the front. Every creak, every sound from the vents felt amplified. Racks swayed slightly as if brushed by unseen hands. Around 2:40, we heard something crash in bedding. All of us ran. A tower of pillows and sheets had toppled over, scattered across the aisle. No one near it. No reason for it to fall. Jess whispered, "We should call security." Mark shook his head. "They won't send anyone till morning. Just finish up. The sooner we're done, the sooner we get out." But none of us finished anything. We just stayed together. At 3:30, the lights in half the store flickered. The overhead speakers, silent all night, buzzed for a second. Then faintly, through the static, came a voice. Low, indistinct, like someone whispering too close to a microphone. "Help!" Jess dropped her phone. Did you hear that?" Mark grabbed the radio. "Who's on this frequency?" The whisper came again, drawn out, distorted. Please." Then the static cut. We stood there, 4 adults, staring at each other like children caught in a nightmare. At 5:15, when the sun finally began to lighten the parking lot, the building seemed to exhale. The noise stopped. The air warmed. Everything felt normal again. We didn't speak. We just clocked out. Jess walked fast to her car, glancing over her shoulder the whole way. Luis lingered by the door. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. "That thing on the camera." He nodded. "It's been here longer than any of us." Mark knows too. Nobody talks about it, but everyone who works nights sees something eventually. I swallowed. "Why stay?" He gave a small, tired smile. "Because sometimes it only bothers you when you notice it. And I can't afford to notice it." He walked away before I could respond. I never went back after that night. Told HR I needed to switch to days, then quit 2 weeks later. Every now and then, when I drive past Crestwood Galleria, I still see the Macy's lights glowing faintly through the glass, like the store's alive even when it shouldn't be. Once, months later, I ran into Jess at a gas station. She'd transferred too. "You ever hear from Luis?" I asked. She shook her head. "He stayed," said he needed the hours. Then she hesitated. "They found him in the back room last month." "Heart attack." Mark said it was sudden. I nodded slowly, my stomach twisting. "Did they ever fix the cameras?" She gave me a look I'll never forget. "They said they did, but they still glitch. Every night around 3 a.m., right when the door starts to rattle. Sometimes I still dream about it. The sound of that metal handle turning, the shadow that shouldn't exist, the feeling that something in that building was waiting, patient, silent, hungry. And every time I wake up, I tell myself it was just stress, just exhaustion, but deep down, I know better. Some places don't stay empty after dark. They just wait for you to notice them. Hello friends, I hope you're enjoying this story. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please hit the subscribe button so you can get a new story every day. Story 4. I used to think night shifts were easy money. That's usually how I start when people ask me what happened, because that's exactly what I thought. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was steady, quiet, predictable, and after years of bouncing between temp jobs and roommates who couldn't pay rent on time, predictable was all I wanted. My name's Rachel Myers, 28 years old when this happened. Back then, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on Claremont Avenue in Brighton, Indiana, a forgettable town with a decent mall, 2 diners, and more cornfields than people. My building was old enough to have those creaky radiator pipes that hissed all night, and neighbors who either argued or played late-night TV loud enough to share. Still, it was cheap, close to the mall, and felt safe enough. That sense of safe enough didn't last long. I'd been working the Macy's night shift at Brighton Mall for about 9 months. Our small crew was like a mismatched family. Lena Parker, our shift lead, early 30s, sharp as a tack, always walking around with her clipboard like it was a shield. She had this calm, no-nonsense energy, the kind you respect immediately. Trey, 19, a college freshman who treated folding clothes like a war crime, always sneaking his phone out, always smiling in that "I'm too young to care" kind of way. Gloria, 58, the motherly one. Everyone called her Mama G. She'd worked there over 20 years, always bringing cookies or banana bread to share. She said, "If we're working through the devil's hours, might as well have something sweet." And finally, Doug Hanlon, mall security. Early 50s, ex-sheriff's deputy, heavy set, always with a thermos of coffee and a walkie that crackled every few minutes. He wasn't technically part of our team, but he always lingered near the loading dock during our shifts. It wasn't a bad gig. The pay was decent, and I liked the quiet. No customers, no rush, just the hum of fluorescent lights, the squeak of shopping carts, and the soft sound of hangers sliding along racks. Until that night. October 19th, Wednesday. It had been raining all day. Not a storm, just that steady, bone-deep drizzle that makes the air heavy and smells like wet concrete. The mall parking lot was nearly empty when I pulled in at 9:45 p.m. The orange streetlights flickered on and off, puddles gleaming like melted glass. Inside, the store was its usual after-hours version of itself. Too quiet, too still. The perfume counters looked ghostly in the half-light. Somewhere deep in housewares, a radio played static. Someone had left it on during the day. Lena was at the front with her clipboard, checking off boxes from the evening shipment. "Hey, Rachel," she said without looking up. "We're doing men's apparel tonight. Shouldn't take too long if we stay focused." "Got it," I said, shaking off my umbrella. Trey wandered by, yawning dramatically. "Focused, sure. If I don't pass out first, then fold faster," Lena shot back. Gloria chuckled softly, setting down a tray of homemade brownies on the break room table. "You all need sugar. I brought the cure." It felt like any other night, calm, routine, harmless. But around 11:20 p.m., something changed. I was restocking a rack of winter coats near the front entrance when I heard it. A faint rattle. At first, I thought it was just the wind pushing against the gate. The outer doors were glass, but the metal security gate was pulled down tight, the lock clipped in place. Still, that sound, it wasn't the creak of metal. It was sharper, like something, or someone, testing it. Then came the sound that made my stomach clench. Ding. The soft electronic chime of the entrance sensor. That sound only played when someone crossed the threshold. I froze, half turning toward the door. My first thought was that it must have been security. Doug sometimes came by that way instead of the back corridor. But when I looked up, it wasn't Doug. A man stood just inside the entryway. He was tall, 6'2", maybe taller, and drenched. Not from rain, though. His gray hoodie was soaked red. It clung to him like a second skin, dark patches glistening under the fluorescent lights. His jeans were streaked too, and his hands were dripping. For a heartbeat, my brain refused to connect what I was seeing. It was too unreal, too out of place in the soft background music and the smell of laundry detergent. Then Lena's voice cut through the stillness. "Sir, store's closed. You can't be in here." The man lifted his head slowly. His eyes looked glazed, like he wasn't seeing her at all. I just need shoes," he said quietly. His voice was flat, almost childlike. Lena blinked. "You're bleeding, sir." "Let me call an ambulance." He shook his head weakly. "No hospitals, just shoes, black ones. For church." Gloria's voice trembled. "Sweetheart, you're hurt real bad." Before anyone could move, Doug appeared from the corridor near the back entrance. His flashlight beam swept across the tile, landing square on the man's chest. "Evening," Doug said slowly. "You're gonna want to stop right there, buddy." The man swayed a little, eyes flicking toward Doug. His mouth worked like he was trying to find the right words. Then, barely audible, he whispered, "I didn't mean to." Doug took one cautious step forward. What was that? The man's head snapped up. His voice rose, raw, shaking. I said I didn't mean to. Blood was dripping faster now, spattering onto the clean white tile. He raised his arm, and that's when I saw it. The deep, jagged slice running down his forearm. And in his other hand, half hidden against his side, glinted something metallic. A knife. Lena's breath caught. Doug's hand went to his radio. All right, son. Put that down. Whatever happened, it's done. Let me help you before you bleed out. The man blinked hard, staring past Doug. His eyes locked on the mannequins behind me, the ones lined up in suits and dresses. They were watching me, he muttered. They saw it. Gloria's hand flew to her mouth. Lena whispered, "Oh, God." Then, without warning, the man bolted forward toward us. Doug lunged, shouting, "Drop it!" His arm caught the man's wrist, the knife clattering across the floor. They crashed against a display rack, coats tumbling down like a fabric avalanche. Trey screamed. I stumbled back, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear over the chaos. Doug grunted, wrestling him down. The man fought weakly, gasping the same words over and over. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. When the backup guard arrived and the police swarmed in minutes later, the man was already going pale, the blood pooling around his arm. We were questioned until dawn. The officers told us later what had happened. The man, Caleb Horton, 34, had been staying at the Suncrest Motel, a mile from the mall. There'd been a fight. His roommate was found dead, stabbed multiple times. Caleb had fled, still bleeding, and wandered into the mall before it locked down fully. They said he was in shock. He didn't even realize how badly he'd cut himself. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the way he looked at the mannequins, like he was sure they knew something he didn't, like they were witnesses. The blood stayed in my memory longer than it did on the floor. The cleaners came the next morning, polished the tile until it gleamed. You'd never know what had happened there, but I knew. I lasted another 2 weeks before I quit. I took a day job at the Brighton Public Library, quiet, slow, predictable. People whispered instead of screamed. The lights were warm, not fluorescent. And yet, sometimes when I'm walking home at dusk and I pass the mall's glass windows, I catch my reflection beside the mannequins, their painted eyes staring out into the street. And just for a second, I swear I can hear that voice again, soft, broken, echoing in my head. I didn't mean to. Story 5. I never thought a job could change the way I feel about silence. That's how I usually start when someone asks what happened that winter, though I never tell them everything. Some things you keep buried, not because you want to, but because they follow you whether you talk about them or not. My name is Jacob Miles, and I was 19 when it happened. 19, broke, and desperate for work in Haven Ridge, Indiana, a town that looked like it was slowly giving up on itself. Most of the old factories had closed. Half the storefronts on Main Street were empty, and the only thing that seemed to be growing were the weeds through the cracked sidewalks. I was living with my mom back then. She worked nights at a diner off the highway, always came home smelling like coffee and grease. We didn't talk much those days, just passing words before she crashed on the couch, and I left for another job interview that probably wasn't going to call back. I dropped out of community college after 1 semester. Couldn't afford the tuition, couldn't justify the loans. I figured I'd work for a while, save up, figure things out later. Later had a way of never coming. That's when I met Mark Halpern. It was early December, gray sky, wind biting through my jacket. I was standing outside Riverside Hardware, staring at the help wanted sign that had been taped there for months, when I heard someone say, "You looking for work, kid?" I turned. The man standing there was in his 40s, maybe 50s, stocky build, a few days stubble, a red flannel shirt under a ripped Carhartt jacket. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. "Yeah," I said. "You hiring?" "Sort of," he replied. "Name's Mark. I run small cleanup crews, old buildings mostly, demo jobs, tear-outs, that kind of thing. Pays cash. You any good with your hands?" I nodded. Worked construction with my uncle a couple summers. Can handle tools. "Perfect. You got gloves, boots?" "Yeah." He grinned, a yellowed cigarette between his teeth. "Then you're in." Easy job. 1-day gig, maybe 2. Pays $150 for the day. You interested? $150 in cash might as well have been gold to me. I didn't even ask the details. Yeah, I'm in. Good. Be at the old Crestline Mall tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. You know it? I think so. Off Highway 9. That's the one. Meet me at the south entrance near the old Macy's. Big red sign, you can't miss it. He gave a short nod and walked off, boots crunching against the frost. I watched him go, wondering what kind of work needed doing inside a dead mall. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how easy it sounded. Simple labor, cash in hand. Maybe it'd lead to steady work. The next morning, I was up before sunrise. Mom was already gone. Double shift at the diner. I left her a note. Got a job today. Back by dinner. Don't wait up. The drive out to Crestline Mall was longer than I remembered. My beat-up Ford Focus rattled the whole way, heater barely working. When I pulled into the parking lot, I realized how wrong my memory was. The place wasn't just closed, it looked abandoned for decades. Cracks ran through the asphalt like veins. The light poles stood like dead trees, their bulbs shattered. The Macy's at the far end loomed over everything, its once white walls stained yellow and green with mildew. Mark's pickup was already there, an old F-250 with rust chewing through the sides. He was leaning against it, smoking, thermos in hand. You're on time, he said. That's a good start. Wasn't hard to find, I replied. This place looks like something out of a horror movie. He chuckled. Yeah, well, don't go writing me off as a serial killer just yet. Come on, I'll show you what needs doing. Inside, the air was colder than it should have been. No power, no heat, but the chill had a weight to it. The faint smell of mold and dust hit first, followed by something else, something metallic, like old coins or rusted pipes. Our boots echoed off the tile floor. Every sound seemed to bounce forever. Creepy, huh? Mark said, flashing his headlamp. Little bit, I admitted. You'll get used to it. We're just tearing out fixtures, counters, shelving, drywall partitions in the back offices. Nothing fancy. I nodded. Who else is working today? Just us. I hesitated. Just 2 people for the whole place? He shrugged. We're not doing the whole store. Just clearing a few sections before the new contractors come in. Shouldn't take more than 8 hours if we stay focused. I tried to ignore the pit in my stomach. Something about the emptiness unsettled me, but I needed the cash, and fear didn't pay bills. By 9 a.m., we were knee-deep in dust and debris. I pried shelving off the walls, stacked metal brackets in a pile, and swept glass from the floor. Mark handled the heavy counters near the front, his headlamp cutting through the dim haze. Ever been inside a mall after closing? He asked at one point. Not like this? He smirked. You'll learn quick. These places have a way of feeling alive. All those years of people moving through them, noise, laughter. When it stops, it leaves something behind. What do you mean? He shrugged. Silence sticks to places like this, soaks into the walls. Some say you can still hear the echoes if you listen close enough. He laughed after saying it, but I didn't. By noon, the cold had settled deep into my bones. I took a break near the old perfume counter, sipping from my water bottle. The store stretched out before me like a graveyard. Racks and mannequins scattered like tombstones. That's when I noticed it. Silence. Not just the absence of noise. Something heavier. My ears rang from how still it was, like the air was pressing inward. Then from somewhere deep in the store came a faint bang. Mark, I called. Yeah? His voice echoed back faintly. You hear that? He stopped hammering. Hear what? Another bang. Louder this time, like a door slamming shut far away. Mark frowned. Probably the wind. Half the ceiling's missing in some parts. Don't worry about it. I tried to laugh it off, but it didn't sit right. The air wasn't moving. The place was still as death. By late afternoon, Mark sent me toward the back hallways to finish removing drywall. The lights from the windows barely reached that far. Everything was soaked in shadow. I found the freight elevator first. Its doors jammed half open, the inside swallowed in darkness. Across from it was a metal door marked cold storage. The metal handle felt icy under my glove. I tugged, and the door creaked open with a groan that made my teeth ache. Inside was a massive walk-in freezer, empty except for a few rusted racks and a broken shopping cart. But what stopped me wasn't what I saw. It was what I felt. Cold. Not the normal kind. It hit me like walking into a winter storm. My breath fogged instantly. There was no power. No working refrigeration. But the cold was real. I stepped back out and shut the door, hard. The sound echoed down the corridor like a gunshot. "Mark?" I called. "Yeah?" "There's something off about the freezer," he shouted back. "Ignore it." They shut power years ago. Probably draft from the vents. But I knew drafts didn't make you see your breath. We worked until dark. When I checked my phone, it was past 6. "You said we'd be done by now," I said. "Yeah, I know. Lost track of time. Give me 20 more minutes. I'll finish up this counter." I nodded, but unease was crawling up my spine. The last bits of daylight had faded, and the only illumination came from Mark's headlamp and my phone. That's when I noticed something strange. A faint light was glowing under the freezer door, cold blue, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Mark!" He looked up. "What is it?" "There's light coming from the freezer." He frowned. "What kind of light?" "Blue." He stared for a long moment, then set down his hammer. "Stay here." He started down the hall. I followed despite myself. The closer we got, the colder it felt. My breath fogged again. The hum of silence turned into something else. Something like whispering. Mark reached for the handle. "Don't," I started, but it was too late. He yanked the door open. The light burst out, cold and flickering. The room inside looked different. The shelves were intact. Boxes stacked neatly, a faint trail of footprints in the frost. Mark stepped in. "What the hell?" The door slammed shut behind him. "Mark!" I lunged, grabbing the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The metal burned against my skin. I pulled until my palms bled. Then through the small square window, I saw him. He was standing in the middle of the room, frozen in place. His breath came out in short bursts. He turned toward me slowly, his eyes wide, mouth open. And behind him, something moved. A shadow taller than the racks. Its shape rippled like smoke. Then in one swift motion, the light went out. "Mark!" I screamed. Nothing. The whispering rose. Dozens of voices all speaking at once, overlapping. I stumbled back, dropped my flashlight, and ran. I don't remember half of it. I just remember running, through aisles over broken glass, past the mannequins that looked like they were turning toward me. When I reached the front doors, the chains were still there. I yanked, pulled, screamed for help. Nothing. Then from somewhere deep inside came a single thud. Heavy, wet. I turned once and saw a shape standing by the escalators. Not moving, not chasing, just standing, watching. I grabbed a crowbar from the floor and smashed the glass. Cold air rushed in. I climbed through, cutting my arms on the shards, and ran across the parking lot until my lungs gave out. By the time I reached the road, my hands were shaking too hard to use my phone. I waved down the first pair of headlights I saw, a county patrol car. The officer thought I was high. When I told him about Mark, about the freezer, about the blue light, he went inside to check. He came back 10 minutes later, pale as the moon. "There's nobody in there," he said quietly. "No footprints, no tools, nothing." I started to argue, but he cut me off. "Kid, you need to go home. There's nothing in that building." He drove me back to town. I never saw Mark again. A year later, Crestline Mall was torn down. Every building except the old MACY'S. The developers said the ground beneath it was unstable. Something about foundation issues. I knew better. Sometimes late at night, when the wind pushes through the trees outside my window, I hear it again. That same low whispering, like dozens of voices talking through static. I tried to tell myself it's just the wind, but I know what I heard that night, and I know what I saw through that freezer window, because some silences don't go away. They just wait for someone else to open the door. Story 6, I was 10 years old when it happened. Old enough to remember every sound, every smell, every moment burned into my memory like static that never quite fades. Too young to understand why adults sometimes look away when they're scared. Back then, the Macy's in Cedar Hill, Missouri wasn't just a store to me. It was practically another world. The kind of place where everything shined, glass counters, perfume mists hanging in the air, lights bright enough to erase shadows. I used to think nothing bad could ever happen there. Not under those lights. But I was wrong. My dad, Daniel Hart, drove a city bus on Route 82, 6 days a week, up before sunrise, thermos of coffee in hand, that faint smell of motor oil and tobacco following him wherever he went. He was a quiet man, the type who measured words like they cost money. My mom, Elaine, worked as a nurse at St. Luke's Regional Hospital. Her shifts bled into each other, 12 hours turning into 14, 14 into 16. We weren't poor, but we were tired, always tired. Dad once said, "You get two choices in life, kid, time or money. You can't ever have both." When both their schedules overlapped, I became the family puzzle piece no one knew quite where to place. Sometimes I rode Dad's bus, staring out at the same city corners over and over. Other nights, I waited in the hospital cafeteria doing homework under buzzing fluorescent lights. But when the overlap fell on a Friday evening, Dad still driving, Mom called in for an emergency shift, I went to Macy's. That's where Aunt Linda worked. Not really my aunt, but Mom's cousin, one of those family members you inherit whether you like it or not. She worked evenings in home goods, restocking bedding and kitchenware, humming 80s songs while folding towels into perfect squares. "Come on, kiddo," she'd say. "You can help me fluff pillows and pretend you're earning a paycheck." It became routine. Every Friday, drop off at 6:15, pick up by 9:30. I'd get a pretzel from the food court, roam the aisles, or sit near the escalators watching the reflections move across the polished floor. The store had its rhythms, the pop music on repeat, the intercom crackle announcing sales, the distant echo of laughter from somewhere you couldn't see. To me, Macy's felt alive, like it breathed along with the city. I met him one of those Fridays. His name, at least the one everyone used, was Mr. Caldwell. He was part of the security team. Late 30s, tall, always in a navy blazer, with a gold badge that gleamed when he moved. His hair was trimmed so neatly it looked sculpted, and he had this habit of chewing gum like it was part of his job description. He had a way of crouching down to my level when he talked, smiling like we shared a secret. "Evening, champ," he said the first time. "You're Linda's little helper, right?" "Yeah. Big responsibility," he grinned. "You keeping the store safe for me?" I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. He chuckled, tapped my shoulder with 2 fingers, and walked off. After that, he seemed to show up every week. Near the escalators, in the toy section, sometimes leaning on the counter in home goods talking with Aunt Linda. Everyone said he was friendly. "Good guy," one of the clerks told my mom once. "Always helps carry out heavy boxes." But there was something about the way he watched, not like a guard, more like someone waiting for something to happen. It was raining that Friday, the kind of Missouri rain that doesn't fall so much as crash, hammering against the glass roof of the mall in sheets. Thunder rolled, low and heavy. The parking lot lights shimmered on the wet pavement. Mom was late for her shift, rushing, hair still damp from the shower. "Stay close to Linda," she said, kneeling to button my jacket. "No wandering tonight. Promise?" "I promise." She kissed my forehead, then was gone, red taillights disappearing into the downpour. Inside Macy's it was warmer than usual, the air thick with perfume and wet clothing smells. I found Aunt Linda near the linen section, stacking boxes. "You can hang out a bit," she said, "but stay where I can see you." I nodded, got a small popcorn from the food court, and parked myself on a bench near housewares. That's when Mr. Caldwell appeared. "Hey, buddy," he said, smiling like always. "Looks like we've got a little storm outside." "Yeah." I clutched the popcorn bag. "You ever seen where the thunder hides?" I blinked. "What?" He laughed. "Kidding. You like adventure, right?" I hesitated. "Sometimes. There's a part of this store most people never see. Old basement. It's not even open to the public anymore. We used to keep storage down there. Creepy place, but kinda cool if you're into exploring." I remembered Mom's voice. "No wandering tonight." "Linda said I should stay here." He smiled wider, eyes glinting. You're a good listener. That's rare. Tell you what, just a quick look. 10 minutes tops. You'll be back before she even notices. He jingled a key ring, the metal catching the light. Come on, you trust me, don't you? The way he said it, like a dare, like saying no would make me small. So I followed. We went past the bedding section, down a narrow hallway marked employees only. I remember the buzz of the overhead lights, the hum of machinery behind the walls. This way, he said, unlocking a gray door that led to a stairwell. Cold air drifted up from below, smelling faintly of rust and dust. You ever been underground? He asked. I shook my head. Well, lucky day. He started down. I followed, my sneakers squeaking on the concrete steps. The noise of the store faded until all I heard was the echo of our footsteps and the drip, drip, drip of water somewhere. At the bottom, another locked door. He used a different key. Pretty cool, huh? He said as it swung open. The air was still. Dusty. The room beyond stretched long and dim, lined with wire cages full of old mannequins, broken shelves and boxes stamped with decades-old logos. Wow, I said. He grinned. Told you. Now want to play a game? What kind of game? Hide and seek, I frowned. I think I should go back. He flicked off the lights. It was instant. Total black. My breath caught in my throat. Mr. Caldwell. Silence. I stepped backward, heart hammering. My hand brushed against a mannequin's arm. I yelped. Something clattered in the dark. A key, a footstep. Stop, I shouted. This isn't funny. Nothing. I started moving, hands out, bumping into metal cages and cardboard. My popcorn bag dropped, scattering across the floor. My voice cracked as I called again. Mr. Caldwell? Far off, something scraped against the floor. Then silence again. Minutes, maybe seconds passed. I couldn't tell. When a sound finally came, it wasn't a voice. It was the faint creak of a door. Light, just a sliver. A voice. My aunt's, faint but real. Eli, you down here? Aunt Linda! I ran toward the light, tripping over boxes, heart pounding so hard it hurt. When she opened the door fully, the hallway flooded with the yellow glow from the stairwell lights. She pulled me out, gripping my shoulders. What the hell are you doing down here? I was crying before I could answer. Behind her, footsteps echoed again, from deeper in the basement. Linda turned. Hello? No reply, but I saw it, movement, just for a second. A shadow slipping behind one of the cages, then gone. By the time my parents arrived, Dad storming through the sliding doors, Mom pale and shaking, the police were already there. Macy's had gone into full panic mode. Caldwell had vanished. They checked security footage. Some clips were missing. Cameras near the basement had malfunctioned. He was fired within the week. No statement, no press. Just gone. A month later, detectives came to our house. They said Caldwell had been tied to theft, credit card skimming, stolen electronics, maybe more. They hinted there were other incidents, but nothing they could prove. Mom cried that night at the kitchen table. Dad stared at the wall, jaw tight. Promise me, he said finally, looking at me. You never go anywhere with someone just because they smile. I promised, but the promise didn't make the nightmares stop. I'm 28 now. I work as a mechanic in Springfield. I don't think about that night often, but sometimes when I'm closing the shop, the flicker of a fluorescent light or the echo of a footstep in an empty hallway brings it all back. The cold air, the darkness, the sound of my heartbeat filling the void. A few months ago, I was visiting home. Mom had stored some boxes in the attic. I was sorting through them when I found an old newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. Former Macy's employee questioned in disappearance of 2 teens, no charges filed. The photo was grainy, but I knew that face. Caldwell, same smile, same perfect hair. The article said he'd left Missouri years ago, moved to Oregon, worked in mall security. My stomach turned cold, because last week, while driving through Springfield Mall's parking lot after grabbing takeout, I saw a man standing near the entrance. Gray blazer, gold badge, chewing gum. When our eyes met through the windshield, he smiled. and raised 2 fingers in a little salute, just like he used to. Story 7, I was 24 when it happened. Old enough to know better, but still young enough to believe that bad things only happen to other people. Back then, in late 2021, the world was still trying to remember how to breathe again. COVID hadn't vanished. It had just become background noise. Masks dangled from wrists, contactless signs gathered dust, and everyone seemed to be waiting for life to make sense again. I had just moved to Cedar Falls, Indiana, a small city that felt like it was holding its breath. My roommate, well, technically my cousin, Jesse, had been living there for years, working as a dental hygienist. When my lease back in Columbus fell through and my savings evaporated, she let me crash in her 2-bedroom apartment on Elmview Street. It's temporary, I told her that first night, surrounded by my boxes and bad decisions. Just till I find something steady. She smiled the way older cousins do when they've heard that lie before. Sure, Ivy. Just a few weeks. Those few weeks stretched into 4 months. Rent was no joke, and decent jobs were still scarce. I'd been piecing together temp work and waiting tables until I finally landed a steady position. Night shift at MACY'S, inside Ridgemont Mall. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. A paycheck, a schedule, a reason to get out of bed. The store itself was huge but tired. 3 floors if you counted the furniture level that always smelled faintly like dust and forgotten coffee. The parking lot lights flickered like dying fireflies, and the mall around it was half empty, a ghost of what it must have been in the 90s. But still, that red Macy's star on the wall gave me some weird sense of security. A chain store felt stable, predictable. My manager, Denise, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who moved like she'd been born behind a counter. She didn't tolerate laziness, but she had this quiet kindness under the surface. Most nights I worked with Caleb, a wiry, sarcastic guy barely out of college who survived on energy drinks and bad jokes. It was usually the 3 of us, me, Caleb, and silence. The first few weeks went by easy. Quiet shifts, folding shirts, restocking displays. Sometimes I'd hum along to the faint instrumental music overhead or listen to Caleb's endless conspiracy theories. Nothing exciting ever happened after 8 p.m. until that Thursday night. I clocked in at 4:02 p.m., hair pulled back, red vest crisp and clean. Denise was waiting by the counter, clipboard in hand. Evening, Ivy. Clearance racks need a reset, and the men's section looks like a tornado hit it, she said. I nodded, forcing a smile. Got it. Anything else? Try to keep Caleb focused. He's been on TikTok, half the night shift noted. She smirked. Good girl. The evening dragged like usual. Around 7:45, the last real customers were wandering out, the air in the store cooling and quieting. I was folding jeans when Caleb strolled over, half a granola bar in hand. You ever notice how this place feels too quiet? He said, his voice echoing softly between racks. It's a department store at night, Caleb. Not a concert, he grinned. Yeah, but still. Sometimes I swear I hear footsteps when no one's there. Like in the fitting rooms, I rolled my eyes. You watch too many horror movies. He shrugged. Maybe. That's when she walked in. She was impossible to miss. Tall, elegant, maybe late 30s, wearing a deep red trench coat that looked expensive enough to pay my rent twice over. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves, perfectly styled. There was something about her that didn't match this place, the way she carried herself, like she belonged somewhere shinier. Her heels clicked on the tile as she approached the counter, smiling as though she'd practiced it in the mirror. Evening, sweetheart, she said. Her voice was soft, deliberate. I'm looking for someone who called me earlier. Said the new luxury bag shipment came in. I blinked. We don't usually call customers about shipments. Oh? Her eyebrows arched in polite surprise. Maybe it wasn't you. You're new here, right? Couple months, I said, trying to keep my tone casual. Her smile deepened, warm on the surface, but something cold behind it. You're lovely. You have the kind of face people notice. I laughed awkwardly. Thanks. Can I help you find something specific? Instead of answering, she leaned closer. The smell of her perfume, sweet, heavy, suffocating, filling the air. "I run a private service," she said smoothly. "High-end clients. We help people find exclusive experiences. You'd fit in perfectly. Polite, pretty, trustworthy. You could make 30, 40,000 in a few months." I froze. I think you've got the wrong idea," I managed. "Oh, don't be shy," she cooed. "It's nothing bad. We take care of our girls. Transportation, housing, everything. You'd barely lift a finger." The phrase "we take care of our girls" made my stomach twist. "I really need to finish stocking," I said, stepping back. She tilted her head. "We're parked right outside." "Just let me show you. 1 minute, that's all?" Before I could respond, a voice cut through the air. "Ma'am." Denise stood a few feet away, eyes hard. "We're closing soon. If you're not shopping, I'll have to ask you to leave." For a moment, the woman didn't move. Her smile faltered, just slightly before she turned it back on, flawless and eerie. "Of course," she said sweetly. "Lovely staff you have." Her gaze flicked back to me one last time. "Think about it, sweetheart. You'd be perfect." And then she walked out, her heels echoing like punctuation marks. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that red coat, that perfect smile, the way she said we pick up our girls. The next day, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe she was a scammer. Maybe it was one of those pyramid schemes that use modeling as bait. Still, a part of me stayed uneasy. When I arrived for my next shift, Caleb was already there. "You look like hell," he said. "Didn't sleep." "Still thinking about Miss Trenchcoat?" "Yeah." He lowered his voice. "Denise told security. They checked the cameras. You know what's weird? She never showed up on the exterior footage. Just vanished." "What?" He nodded. "No car, no plate, no nothing." That unease turned into full-blown dread. Around 11:30 that morning, I was fixing a jeans display when a man walked in. Mid-40s, bald, pale, wearing a pressed white shirt and holding a red binder. He didn't shop, didn't browse, just ordered a coffee from the mall cafe and sat at a booth facing Macy's entrance. He wrote something occasionally in the binder, but never looked at it long. Mostly he looked at me. I tried to ignore it, but every time I glanced up, his eyes were already there, cold, calculating. At one point, I walked by just close enough to hear him whisper into his phone. "Yeah, she's still here. I told her yesterday." "No, the girls are lined up already. We'll move the van closer to the dock." I stopped breathing. He looked up just as I turned away, pretending to fix a display. My hands shook so badly that I nearly knocked over a rack of belts. I hurried into the stockroom. Caleb was there, humming off-key. "Caleb," I whispered, "that guy with the binder. He's with her. He said something about a van, about girls." His expression drained. "You serious?" "I heard him." He peeked out, then quickly pulled back. "He's still watching." Denise found us 5 minutes later. One look at our faces and she didn't ask questions. She walked straight to her office, locked the door, and called mall security. By the time the guards showed up, the man was gone. So was his coffee cup. I quit the next morning. Didn't even finish my 2 weeks. Denise didn't fight it. She just nodded slowly, like she'd seen this kind of thing before. For weeks afterward, I jumped every time someone knocked on the door. I'd catch flashes of red in parking lots and freeze. Once, at a gas station, I saw a woman in a similar coat standing near a van with tinted windows. I drove off before I could blink twice. I never filed a report. Never told my parents. What could I even say? That a stranger almost talked me into disappearing? Now, years later, I still double-check every lock. I park under lights. I scan faces before walking to my car. Because sometimes, especially on quiet nights when I shop late, I hear that same sound again, the sharp click-click of heels behind me. And I remember her voice, syrupy and calm, whispering from somewhere too close. "You'd be perfect."